Noobs in Combat is a turn-based strategy game where you can conquer and destroy with your massive army, or get completely destroyed by some howitzer on the other side of the freaking map. The basics. Your in-match money is ticks, which is used to buy all your questionable war machines. Ticks will be given to you at the start of every turn, depending on how many buildings you have control over. But you can also gain them when destroying enemy units. Buildings give you ticks and certain other bonuses, depending on which ones you have. Supply depots let you resupply your units a limited number of times because apparently they don't have infinite ammo. HQs let you spawn in units and resupply your units an unlimited amount of times because apparently they do have infinite ammo. Factories just make a ton of ticks, and things like airports and ports, I think, let you spawn in special units. Morale and health both dictate how well your units are doing and how close they are to dying from their many gruesome wounds. If a unit reaches 0 health, they just die, but if they reach 0 morale, they surrender. If an infantry unit surrenders, it will pretty much just die, but if a vehicle surrenders, it will become neutral and can be captured or reclaimed. Health is lost by a unit getting attacked and is regained mainly by getting resupplied. Morale is lost when a unit is attacked or is near an allied unit that is killed or surrenders. Morale can be regained by being resupplied or just like attacking. Seriously, even if you just shoot the ground, they still gain some morale. It's also good to note that units do more damage and take less damage if they have a lot of morale. The last thing I want to mention when it comes to morale and health is that when a unit kills enemy units, they gain veterancy, which generally just increases all of their stats. The goal of the game is usually to capture/destroy a building or buildings, or to defend a building or buildings for a certain amount of turns. I don't know, I guess the enemies just give up after like 10 turns. You should probably note that certain units are better defending or attacking, so you might have to change up your playstyle a bit. Units. There are 5 types of units in Noobs in Combat, ranging from this little sniper guy to battle tanks to submarines to bombers to much more. The 5 types of units are infantry, ground vehicles, artillery, which can also count as most other types of vehicles, and just other types of units in general, air vehicles, and water vehicles. Do note that water and air vehicles are not affected by morale most of the time. Infantry. Infantry are actual soldiers. They cost a lot less than pretty much everything else, but they also tend to have less health and do less damage. They take a lot of damage from guns, but not as much from explosives. Infantry is the only kind of unit that can actually capture other units and buildings, so it is usually a good idea to have at least one in your roster. Some infantry are really good at destroying vehicles, and some are really good at destroying other infantry, and some can call in artillery. In fact, some are artillery. If you want to be able to jump scare battle tanks and blow up light vehicles in one shot, you should go with the RPG unit, though its 2 predecessors are pretty trash, so getting to the RPG might take a while. If you want infantry so you can capture things or call in artillery, you should upgrade your riflemen to Grunts or Grunts M. Grunts have a radio so they can call in massive artillery strikes, while Grunts M have the ability to heal bullet wounds on the go. For anti-infantry, you probably want to go for the light machine gun, as it has a lot of range for a gun, does a lot of damage for a gun, and can attack enemies on their own turn if they move into its range. Just keep in mind that the light machine guns are super fragile and will freaking die if pretty much anything happens to them. You know what's even more fragile? Radiotech is an infantry unit that can be one-shot by pretty much anything, but also can one-shot pretty much everything. This little guy likes to host fireworks shows on the ground by calling in a ton of massive missiles that devastate one tankette. You can also call in missiles to attack in a general area of the radiotech rather than a specified location. If you get lucky with this, you can destroy a ton of units, but the radiotech is pretty much guaranteed to die if you do this, which could be annoying since it costs way more than most infantry. There's also sniper and flamethrower infantry, but they're pretty trash in most situations. Flamethrowers do a ton of damage to units in trees and buildings, and snipers are only really good for vision and maybe calling in artillery. Oh, and sappers exist now, which can spend ticks to put down landmines. Land vehicles. Land vehicles have the most out of any of the units, but a lot of them are very, very similar. I'm going to say that land vehicles come in 3 different health/armor variations: light armor, medium armor, and heavy armor. When it comes to tanks and noobs in combat, there are many, many to pick from. If you're just looking to fight off infantry, you go with the tankette. It's got light armor, so it's not very good against other vehicles with explosives, but it takes very little damage from bullets and does a good amount to infantry. It's also super cheap for a vehicle. If you go up the tank ladder, you get light tank, medium tank, and heavy tank, all having their respective armor types depending on their name. Each one also doing more damage than the last. Although the heavy tank moves extremely slowly, if you have the cash and you want the best tank on the market, you can buy the extremely expensive battle tank. Coming with heavy armor, high damage, and high mobility, the battle tank is usually considered the best tank you can get. With some morale and some veterancy, the battle tank can one-shot pretty much everything with light armor. There are a few other tanks you might consider though. The multi-tanks are basically just less powerful tanks, but with the added bonus of being able to attack multiple times. The final evolution, multi-H tank, is the only one that can use explosives multiple times though. The other two might not be able to use explosives multiple times, but they can use machine guns multiple times, which is quite good for killing infantry and lowering their morale. The missile tank is the final evolution of the anti-tank line. It is very good against all ground vehicles, but is at its best when defending and not attacking. This is because it has the ambush perk, like the light gunner. This allows to attack enemy units during their own turn. It's the best counter for pretty much every vehicle, including the battle tank. The last tank I want to mention is the recon tank. It does a lot of damage, has high mobility, and can call in artillery with its radio. The one major downside is that it's not very tanky despite it being a tank. It's pretty good if you have a lot of artillery, but want more than a few grunts to be able to use it. Another alternative is the first non-tank ground vehicle, the recon car. While it has a machine gun and a pretty weak explosive, the reason you would want to use this unit is it can move twice in one turn. With this, you can run into enemy territory, call in artillery, and run away without letting them fight back at all. The main weakness to this strategy is if the enemy has anti-tank weapons, they might be able to destroy your recon car since they can attack on your turn. Another special type of ground vehicle are the supply vehicles. Ranging from horse wagon to truck to armored truck, these vehicles are effectively the Uber Eats of your military. Delivering supplies to your units, they can heal and refill ammo to whatever needs it. They are usually pretty cheap, but have no way of defending themselves. Though this can be countered by the fact that they can transport a little bit of infantry with them. If they die, any infantry they are carrying do as well though. If you just want transportation, you should go with the IFV. Though there are many benefits to its previous evolutions, I think the IFV is the best since it is the safest for the units inside. This is because it has 3 different weapons, all very effective against different kinds of enemy units. The final land vehicle I want to talk about is the SPAG. The SPAG is extremely effective against aerial units, infantry, and light vehicles. This is one of my favorite units since it can one-shot pretty much all infantry other than commandos, which aren't even obtainable by players. Artillery. Artillery units have powerful attacks with massive range, but require other units with radios to be used. To start off, probably the worst artillery is the mortar. It has small range for artillery and doesn't do enough damage to ever justify making strategy based off of it. Of course, it does have some use if you already have units with radios. Having a mortar follow them around is still free damage, even if it's not a lot. Next up are the field guns. They are perfectly accurate and only hit one square. Field guns are kind of just the most basic artillery since they don't really do anything special other than what you would expect artillery to do. After you evolve field guns, you get howitzers. They are notorious for hiding in some tree super far away and destroying a ton of your units in one shot. Though they are very expensive, the howitzers pay it off with the fact that they hit 5 squares instead of 1. They also do pretty high damage and have huge range. A bunker buster is a very good artillery unit for finding and destroying hiding enemies. Dealing more damage to buildings and building units, it is very destructive against enemy cover. It also has the added perk of being able to attack in specific locations without needing another unit with a radio. The final artillery I'll list here is the rocket truck. The rocket truck shoots 4 rockets that each hit 5 tiles. It is very good for clearing out infantry, but can put the radio user in danger because of how many tiles the rockets could hit. Using the rocket truck is one of the few times you can justify using the sniper team, since their radio range is large enough to keep them at a safe distance from all the rockets. Navy/Sea vehicles. Navy units are usually very good support units, being able to resupply, attack aerial units, and use their own artillery. They can be very helpful to you and your allies. The cargo ship can carry a ton of units and has infinite resupplies. If you keep your ground vehicles within its reach on the beach, they will be able to survive longer since you never have to worry about the resupplier getting resupplied. It is also very much necessary in order to move ground vehicles and infantry across water. The missile boat is pretty much just artillery on water, because, of course, I want to strap missiles and machine gun to my civilian use boat. It has a very powerful attack and has almost map-wide range. It is very good at taking out other ships, but can be used for normal artillery purposes as well. The destroyer pretty much has a field gun strapped to it and a bunch of anti-submarine stuff. It can show the number of cloaked units in its range, along with an attack that pretty much always one-shots submarines. It also has an anti-air attack that can only be used via the ambush perk. The cruiser sub has a torpedo and an artillery attack that it can use to destroy large ships. As a submarine, it can also become hidden from enemy units, even when in their range. This sub can also store and resupply one aerial unit at a time. Pretty weird having a runway on a submarine. The battleship uses artillery and anti-air guns to deal huge damage to pretty much all units. It can attack any kind of unit in the game and does massive damage to them all. Often compared to the battle tank, the battleship is extremely powerful and extremely expensive. The aircraft carrier and seaplane tender are both very good for resupplying and transporting aircraft. The battleship can carry 3 of any kind of aerial units, but this comes at the cost of being absurdly expensive. The seaplane tender can only hold seaplanes, but can resupply other vehicles and won't take literally all of your money. Aircraft/air vehicles. Aerial units usually have a lot of firepower and can't be attacked by most units, although the units that can attack them typically do a ton of damage. The spotter is a recon airplane with massive sight range but no attacks. Fortunately, it does have a radio, so it can call in artillery. There's not much to say about it other than it's really good at getting intel on where enemies are. If you just really don't like airplanes and the SPAG isn't enough, you should get the fighter. It is very good at destroying other planes and can do some pretty good damage to lightly armored ground units. So yeah, it's pretty much just a flying SPAG. The dive bomber is very good at destroying ground and sea units, but is completely vulnerable to other aerial units. It's probably a good idea to protect it with some kind of escort. The light gunship is the only obtainable helicopter, and with its missiles it is very good at destroying infantry and light vehicles. But since a nerf, you might want to consider using the missile truck if the enemies have anti-air guns. If they don't, though, you can drop as many missiles as you want on them and be completely crippling their morale. Torpedo bomber is the final aero unit I want to cover. It specializes in doing massive damage to sea vehicles. It is usually used to attack sea vehicles from further away, so it doesn't get one shot by said sea vehicles. Difficulties. Noobs in Combat has 3 different difficulties that will each cause you a different amount of extreme pain and suffering. Normal. Normal is the easiest difficulty, but it gives the least rewards. In normal difficulty, the enemies are lower evolutions and therefore tend to be much weaker. Honestly, normal difficulty can be quite fun if you don't want to strategize or you don't have anyone to play with. Wow, literally me. Tryhard. In tryhard difficulty, enemies are higher evolutions than normal and have starting veterancy, though tryhard can be decently easy on easy, medium, and even hard campaigns. It can be extremely difficult in turn annoying in extreme campaigns. In order to beat an extreme map on tryhard difficulty, you usually need to know the map decently well and make a strategy based on what units the enemies have. Rigged. Rigged is usually the hardest difficulty, but is a bit odd since it's not really balanced like the others. In Rigged, all enemies are at the max evolution and you make no money from buildings. This by itself would be super difficult, but Rigged also takes away enemy starting veterancy. In maps where units are already at max evolution and you don't need to rely on reinforcements, Rigged can be easier than tryhard, but at other times Rigged can make a map much more difficult. For example, pretty much all defense maps are made much worse due to the lack of ticks from buildings. Thank you so much for watching till the end of the video. If you like this video or have any feedback on the video or the audio, please comment it below, as well as if you have any suggestions for videos in the future.